Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The body sect didn't remain quiet for long. They strongly condemned the indiscriminately murderous mission issued by the illustrious Virtue Hall, and also firmly stated that they had nothing to do with the incident. They then stated that whoever dared to exact revenge on them would have to bear the consequences of their actions. However, regardless of what the body sect said, their standing on the continent had increased greatly. They now seemed even more powerful than Shrek Academy, or the illustrious Virtuous Hall, and appeared to be the top power on the continent. Hui Yuhao only learned of these things when he woke up. He slept for 4 days straight, before finally waking up in the infirmary. It hadn't been an act, he'd truly been asleep the entire time. However, when he woke up, Hui Yuhao felt an odd sensation. It was as if a door in his spiritual world had been opened, as his mind was unusually clear compared to before. His understanding of previously blurry profound concepts of necromancy had also improved greatly. Electrolux was asleep when he woke up, as was the Snow Empress. The Ice Empress and Sky Dream told Hui Yuhao that the Snow Empress seal had been completed, but that her power could only be unsealed once Hui Yuhao had achieved the level of a soul sage. In her sleep, the Snow Empress was trying to regain her spiritual awareness. Everything else appeared to be normal. Hui Yuhao hadn't become stronger because of the Snow Empress' successful sealing, but he looked forward to the moment that he would evolve like Electrolux had said. How would the Snow Empress fuse with him? What would the evolution reject? If not for the fact that Electrolux was asleep, he would have demanded an answer. The internal chaos within the illustrious Virtue Hall had nothing to do with Hui Yuhao. However, he was still extremely worried when he woke up. After all, the huge Starlight Sapphire storage-type soul tool and the giant metal figure were both still inside his storage-type soul tool. He didn't even have to think to know their significance to the illustrious Virtue Hall. They'd definitely spare no effort to find them. Hui Yuhao was extremely worried that they'd search everyone's storage-type soul tools. If that happened, there was nowhere he could hide them. I'm fine now. Can I return to my dormitory? Hui Yuhao asked the doctor on duty. On the day that the illustrious Virtue Hall was attacked, what did you see? What were you doing? When the teacher asked this question, he waved his hand at the doctor, signaling for him to leave them. After some thought, Hui Yuhao replied, that day, I was in the middle of making a soul tool. Just as I finished up one of the component, there was a huge explosion. I'm a spirit-type soul master, thus I have a very astute sense of danger. The moment I sensed that something was amiss, I immediately hid underneath the table. I heard an explosion from outside, while the following terrifying soul power shockwave prevented me from venturing outside. After the battle outside had quieted down, I snuck a peek, and then ran to the side of the illustrious Virtue Hall. Then, I felt a strong force strike me, then I blacked out. Hui Yuhao was able to avoid lying as he answered. What he'd said was the truth of the matter. While he didn't know if they'd survived the battle, he did knew that there were surveillance-type soul tools in the underground facility of the illustrious Virtue Hall. There was no point in arousing the other's suspicions for a few meaningless details. After he heard what Hui Yuhao had said, the teacher nodded his head and said, anything else? For example, did you discover anything special? Hui Yuhao shook his head with a blank look on his face. In the Ultimate Soldier plan, they had undergone intensive interrogation training. When he answered these questions, Hui Yuhao's heart rate and tone were all perfectly normal. Even his eyes didn't give him away. The teacher stared at him carefully for a while before slowly shaking his head. He took out a metal stick from the storage-type soul tool on his wrist, and then said, I have to do a complete sweep of you. Please put all of your soul tools into a storage-type soul tool. When you're done, pass them to me. You can't leave anything out. Hui Yuhao's expression turned dark and he replied, sorry, teacher, but I have a right to my privacy. I can't let you search them. I'm an exchange student from Shrek Academy. Even if I'm just an ordinary student here, you have no right to search me. The teacher chuckled coldly and replied, no right. Don't forget our school's name, the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. We fall under direct imperial jurisdiction. As such, all of our students have sworn loyalty to the imperial family, and our management is semi-military. This is a personal order from His Majesty. Anyone who refuses to be interrogated and searched shall be dealt with as a traitor. I don't care where you're from, but since you were in our school at the time of the incident, you must be searched thoroughly. The fact that we didn't search you while you were recovering is already a gesture to preserve your dignity. Hui Yuhao's face turned red, and he said angrily, fine, go ahead and search. Please tell Hallmaster Jing Hongchen that I will report this incident to Shrek Academy. You can only pray that your students will not undergo such treatment at my school. As he said that, he placed all his soul tools, including Hongchen's blessing, into his belt storage type soul, which was an imitation of the 24 moonlit bridges, and the storage type tool on his wrist. Then, he passed them to the teacher. When he heard Hui Yuhao's threat, the teacher's face softened as he sighed. He said, please don't be too angry. We have no choice here. Even if a prince is in the academy, he'll be interrogated and searched, too. Hui Yuhao looked at him out of the corner of his eyes, which were brimming with rage, and said angrily, does this mean you don't trust me? Lin Jiari spread his hands open, and made a helpless gesture. He said, it's not that I don't trust you. However, reality states otherwise, and that is what we must deal with. Don't worry, I will inform Teacher Fan Yu. However, you must explain yourself clearly right now. Hui Yuhao nodded coldly and said, right, since you don't want face, there's no need for me to cover up for you. Let's go. Bring me to the hallmaster, and I shall explain it in front of him. Lin Jiari was helpless before Hui Yuhao. Jing Hongchen had told him of his importance many times. Furthermore, Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen were still at Shrek Academy. While he already had Hongchen's blessing as evidence, he could not truly lose his temper at Hui Yuhao or do anything drastic to him. All he suspected was a possible connection between Hui Yuhao and the surprise attack by the body sect. All right, I shall bring you to the hallmaster. In the end, Lin Jiari decided to let Jing Hongchen take care of Hui Yuhao. First, this was because his status was too sensitive. Second, Jing Hongchen had been in a foul mood recently. He had been heavily punished by the imperial family, and that was before news of the loss of Test Subject 1 leaked out. Right now, in Lab Number 1, some of Jing Hongchen's confidants were trying to rebuild Test Subject 1. With their experience, their progress was rather quick. However, the once vast resources of illustrious Virtue Hall had been greatly reduced. In cuffs, Hui Yuhao walked out of the infirmary with his back straight and head held high. A cold smile was plastered on his face. His self-righteous appearance made Lin Jiari's heart pound. However, the rank 9 soul tool, Hongchen's blessing, was not something that Shrek Academy could have produced. Furthermore, there were still traces of Jing Hongchen's aura on it. Those traces could not be faked. Lin Jiari would never believe that Jing Hongchen would gift a rank 9 soul tool to an outsider. He also could not imagine that the revolutionary test subject, one of the illustrious Virtue Hall, was currently located in the 24 moonlit bridges around Hui Yuhao's waist. Right now, the teenager's face was both relaxed and infuriated. Jing Hongchen's office was no longer in Virtuous Illustrious Hall out of safety considerations, since the underground facility had not yet been fully reinforced. While the new location was not suited for work, Jing Hongchen had no mood to carry out research on soul tools at the moment. When Hui Yuhao followed Lin Jiari into Jing Hongchen's office, he was resting with his eyes closed. In just the span of a few days, the hallmaster, who previously looked impeccable, appeared to have aged 10 years. His face appeared much colder, too. What happened? When he saw Lin Jiari bringing Hui Yuhao into his office in handcuffs, a suspicious look crossed Jing Hongchen's face. Lin Jiari said respectfully, Hallmaster, this was what happened. Today, Hui Yuhao woke up in the infirmary and per regulations, we interrogated him and searched him. While nothing appeared to be amiss, we found a rank 9 soul tool on him that belonged to you. Hence, our suspicions were aroused, and we decided to let you decide his fate. A rank 9 soul tool that belonged to me. Jing Hongchen paused momentarily. Then, his eyes fell on the Hongchen's blessing that Lin Jiari passed him. When he saw the round soul tool, along with Hui Yuhao smiling coldly, Jing Hongchen felt as if he had been slapped before a crowd by one of his own people. Did he not tell you how this rank 9 soul tool came about? Jing Hongchen asked. Jing Hongchen took the key from Lin Jiari and personally cuffed him while saying, Jiari, please remember that you must give Yuhao special treatment. If a problem like this emerges again, you can forget about being a teaching director. Yes, yes. Lin Jiari could only chuckle bitterly in his heart. Why was it so difficult to deal with this rascal? He really had to be more careful next time. Hui Yuhao said, if there's no other matter, Hallmaster, I shall head back. Today is the last day of the month, so there's no need for you to double my allotment for this month. In the outside world, the monthly allotment of the illustrious Virtue Hall was no small sum. Some of the materials could not even be sold on the market. Jing Hongchen's facial muscles twitched as he said, "It has to be counted." With that, Hu Yuhao nodded in satisfaction and said, "Then I shall leave." As he said that, he turned to walk out, his tension finally starting to relax. Just because he could control his heartbeat did not mean that he was relaxed. Instead, he was worried sick. If he could not pass this round, he would be in deep trouble. He made it to the door of the office, and was just about to leave when he heard Jing Hongchen say suddenly, "Wait a moment." Oh, no. Hu Yuhao felt his pores constricting. He was struck by fear. He almost dropped everything and ran. Fortunately, he was very mature for his age, probably more mature than some adults. Could he actually run away? Not only was Jing Hongchen a rank 9 Seoul engineer, but he was also a titled Doluo. How could he escape? All he could do was turn around and ask, "Do you have a request, Hallmaster?" Jing Hongchen fell silent for a while, and then said, "Yuhao, if I remember correctly, you were part of the main team in the last Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament, right?" Hu Yuhao shook his head and said, "Not the main team. I was only a stand-in." The corners of Jing Hongchen's eyes twitched. A stand-in? A stand-in beat my grandson and granddaughter. Was this not a slap on his face? However, he could not react. He coughed and said, "It's like this. The incidents a few days ago have affected me greatly. The reason our facility was invaded and we suffered such heavy losses was that our Soul engineers did not have a lot of battle experience against Soul Masters. Normally, they are surrounded by other Soul engineers, and hence they will only battle other Soul engineers. So I've had an idea." When he heard that, Hu Yuhao calmed down, thinking, "Whatever you say, it's fine. Just don't search me." He walked back into Jing Hongchen's office and asked obligingly, "What idea did you have, Hallmaster?" Jing Hongchen said, "Shrek Academy is the premier academy on the continent, particularly for Soul Masters. Our Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy is the best school on the continent in terms of soul engineering. You were able to represent Shrek Academy previously, which demonstrates your ability in battling other Soul Masters. Hence, with you as the lead, I want to let the Soul Masters and Soul Engineers in our school spar. This will let our students understand how Soul Masters fight. Don't worry, I will only pick opponents whose ages are similar to yours. At best, they would be rank 5 Soul Engineers. What do you think?" Hu Yuhao shook his head and said, "No, I am not interested." "Why not?" Jing Hongchen asked, curious. "This is a good chance to increase your combat experience." Hu Yuhao smiled slightly and said, "I have enough combat experience, and I don't need any more. Hallmaster, please ask someone else. I'm here to study, not to fight." Jing Hongchen's face instantly turned foul as he said, "Fine, state your conditions." Hu Yuhao chuckled and said, "You understand me so well." After Hu Yuhao returned to his dormitory, he plonked down on his bed immediately. The psychological pressure was too much to bear. Even then, his heart continued to thump loudly against his chest, as if it wanted to break out from his chest. Right after he woke up from his sleep, he was faced with an immense challenge. In the end, he was able to turn the situation around. He could more or less guess the reason why Jing Hongchen wanted him to spar with Soul engineers from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, but he still agreed to it. He needed to obtain more precious metals, and he needed a chance to release his pent-up emotions. Ever since he had entered the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, he had been in a state of constant alertness. Regardless of whether it was in his studies or his secret drawing of the map, he was under immense pressure, further exacerbated by this incident. The Ultimate Soldier Plan had special psychology lessons. His teacher taught him that once his mental pressure reached a certain level, he would need to find a suitable location to vent. If not, it would create psychological problems, especially for someone of his age. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was knocking on his door. Hu Yuhao stretched out on his bed. In doing so, he allowed himself to calm down. Only then did he walk to his door to open it. Just as he expected, Fan Yu and Hikai Tu were outside. When they noticed that he was fine, they evidently became calmer. Quickly, they entered his room. Hikai Tu closed the door behind him. "Little Junior, you almost scared teacher and me to death. I heard from other members of our academy that the situation that day was extremely dangerous. You were out for a few days. While the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy allowed us to pay you a visit, we could not tell what was wrong. Luckily, you are fine. While the Shrek's 7 monsters were all ranked, Hikaitu was still willing to call Hui Yuhao Little Junior. After all, only the 2 of them were soul engineers. Hui Yuhao shook his head and said, I don't know how I was knocked unconscious. It was really dangerous that day. The body sect was too powerful, and they appeared to be very familiar with the interior of the illustrious Virtue Hall. As the attack came too suddenly, the illustrious Virtue Hall suffered heavy casualties. Then, he recounted the incident of that day simply. However, he did not talk about him entering the interiors of the illustrious Virtue Hall through the tunnel. Hui Yuhao had his considerations too. The Metal Man was extremely important, and it was best for as few people as possible to know about it. It might not be a good idea to tell teacher Fan Yu and second senior. Furthermore, he was also afraid that it would expose his connection to the Snow Lady. All he said was that the Snow Lady blew up and nothing else. As for the Metal Man, he decided to tell no one before he returned to Shrek Academy. He would say everything back at Shrek Academy. 2 days later, at dawn, Yi Xiaoxing came to fetch Hui Yuhao at his door. Yuhao, how are your preparations going? Brother Xing supports you. This is a huge matter. You must do your best for Shrek's glory. Hui Yuhao chortled and replied, thanks, Brother Xing. I'll do my best. Yi Xiaoxing laughed and said, I've prepared the stuff. They'll be shocked today. You don't know how arrogant they are. They claim that they won't even let you win 1 round. They even say they'll step on Shrek. They say that you're here to deliver presents to them, and ask the academy to prepare more rewards. It's a pity that I can't compete. Otherwise, I'd teach them a good lesson. Hui Yuhao smiled as he said, Brother Xing, don't worry. I'll help you teach them a lesson. Oh right, how's the situation regarding that matter? As he spoke, he lifted his right hand and rubbed a few of his fingers together. Yi Xiaoxing immediately understood what he meant. He replied with a grin, many started wagering after we opened the plate. I have to admit that these students are very confident in their own people. More than half of them bet that you won't last 10 rounds. I wonder if their brains are empty. Only a quarter of them bet that you can't last more than 20 rounds. The rest bet then you can't win 50 rounds in 3 days, they just did it for the odds. Based on what we've discussed, rare metals can be used as stakes. We've received more than 2,000 kilos of rare metals, and 500,000 gold soul coins. These students sure are wealthy. Hui Yuhao furrowed his brow and said, that is indeed quite a lot of rare metals, but not that many gold soul coins. But it's okay. I believe more and more people will bet after today. As the 2 of them were talking, Fan Yu, Hikaitu, and the rest of Shrek's students also arrived. Fan Yu looked at Hui Yuhao and asked directly, are you ready? Although it was only morning, the entire Soul Tool experimentation area was full. There were close to 12,000 teachers and students present, including some from the illustrious Virtue Hall. It wasn't just the students who wanted to see the differences between how Soul Masters and Soul Engineers fought, even the teachers were curious. The academy had suspended lessons for 3 days for the sake of this sparring competition. Jing Hongchen hadn't attended, as there were too many things that he needed to see to. Lin Jiari, on the other hand, was responsible for hosting the competition. To Jing Hongchen, it didn't matter how long Hui Yuhao managed to last in the competition. No matter what, the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy was bound to benefit from it. The camaraderie between their students would increase, and they would also learn more about the differences between Soul Masters and Soul Engineers. It would be an exciting lesson for the students. Due to a lack of seats, the students who arrived late had to sit among the aisles, or stand in between the rows. Fortunately, the arena was large enough to accommodate everyone. As the referee, Lin Jiari also made a lot of deliberations. He finally chose to invite Xian Ziwen, firstly, because of Xian Ziwen's teacher-student relationship with Hui Yuhao, and secondly, because of Xian Ziwen's abilities. Initially, Lin Jiari thought that Xian Ziwen would decline his offer. However, Xian Ziwen agreed readily after listening to his proposition. His reasoning was also very simple. He wanted to see how strong his student was in terms of fighting strength as a Soul Master. When Hui Yuhao first came, he'd personally taught a lesson to a few Class 5 Soul Engineers. Zuan also knew that the students were making their own private bets. The odds were 3-1 that he couldn't survive 10 rounds, 2-1 that he couldn't survive 20 rounds, and 30-100 that he couldn't survive 50 rounds. Those who offered such odds were clearly confident that Hu Yuhao could win 50 consecutive rounds. Why were Shrek Academy's students so confident? It's important to know that Hu Yuhao only had 4 rings. Even if he rested between rounds, he still needed to fight for a long period of time. The Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy wasn't a small academy either. Even if the illustrious Virtue Hall's students didn't participate, Hu Yuhao was bound to collapse from 3 days of intense fighting. And once he lost 1 round, he might not have the ability to carry on further. All right, please quiet down. Lin Jiao's imposing voice resonated throughout the entire arena through a sound-amplifying soul tool. The excited students, who were engaged in discussions, immediately started to quiet down and turn their attention to him. Lin Jiao continued, "For the purpose of strengthening our exchange and interaction, the Academy has decided to organize this sparring competition. Shrek is sending out Hu Yuhao, an exchange student who once competed in the Elite Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. I hope that all of you will do your best to observe this competition, even if you aren't involved in it. Try your best to sense the differences between Soul Masters and Soul Engineers, as well as deepen your own understanding of them. The referee for this friendly exchange will be Teacher Zuan, and I'll be the host. Let's welcome Shrek Academy's Hu Yuhao onto the stage." A tunnel at the side of the arena opened slowly, and students wearing the dark green uniform of Shrek emerged alongside Teacher Fan Yu. Afterwards, 3 scrolls drifted into view for all of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering students to see. The scroll displayed by the students on Hu Yuhao's left held a string of words that said, Shrek. Number 1. In the world. Invincible. The scroll displayed by the students on his right said, Tang Sect. Complete. Dominance. Throughout. All. Eternity. He Kaitu stood behind Hu Yuhao and lifted a horizontal scroll that said, Come fight us if you're unconvinced. A huge uproar ensued after the 3 scrolls were presented. The 9 students in the formation quickly revolved around Hu Yuhao and allowed the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy to clearly see who Hu Yuhao was. A huge uproar erupted, with some students even wanting to fire their soul tools towards the arena. Expletives rang out across the entire place. Silence, silence. Lin Jiao roared furiously, Teachers, please restrain your students. The competition is about to begin. Irrelevant personnel, please remove yourselves from the arena. He felt extremely depressed. He hadn't expected the Shrek Academy students to pull such a stunt. Weren't they simply creating a ruckus on purpose? There were only 11 of them, and only Hu Yuhao was competing. Why were they trying to cause such a ruckus? Weren't they creating trouble out of nothing? However, things had already happened. The entire atmosphere of the competition was already starting to change. The entire Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy was bursting with emotion now, and the students, who'd been seated, had all stood up. Things seemed to be going out of control. However, Hu Yuhao appeared unbothered. He even lifted his right hand and slowly turned his thumb to point towards the ground. Even though he didn't mutter a word, his provocation was clear. He was signaling for the other students to challenge him if they were unconvinced. Arrogant, he was too arrogant. Fortunately, the teachers managed to control their students well. The students were quickly restrained by the teachers. Furthermore, the entrance of the first Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's student helped stabilize the situation. Kill him. Send this Shrek country bumpkin back home. Long live the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. Long live the Sun Moon Empire. Humiliation like this can only be washed away with blood. I'll be the girlfriend of whoever beats him. All the spectators were causing a racket. But there were also those who remained silent, like Cuckoo and Zimu. Zuan had originally had 5 students. Cuckoo and Zimu had entered the illustrious Virtue Hall when Hu Yuhao did, while Zhu Zi had stopped her studies to join the military, and Wang Xiaojie had been expelled. Thus, there were only 3 students left out of the original 5. Since Hu Yuhao was the main character in this competition, Cuckoo and Zimu also had to come. The first round is about to begin. Everyone, please remain silent and give both parties a peaceful competition's atmosphere. Whoever makes noises will be punished according to the school's rules and regulations. Lin Jiao's stern voice reverberated all throughout the surroundings. This would help to contain the slightly messy situation. Hu Yuhao's opponent was a youth, one who looked to be 18 or 19 years old. The badge on his chest revealed that he was a Class 5 Soul Engineer. However, he definitely seemed a little nervous now. While Hu Yuhao's previous actions had provoked the students from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, they also put a lot of pressure on the competing students. If they won, they would be treated as the heroes of the academy. But if they lost, they would become sinners. This was even more evident so for the first student to spar with Hu Yuhao, Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's Class 5 Soul Engineer, Xie Xianchen. The nervous youth reported his name as he looked at Hu Yuhao. The entire arena was now silent. Everyone's attention was focused on them. Shrek. Tang sect. Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao said indifferently. Xian Zuan was unhappy when he looked at Hu Yuhao. He said in a deep voice, "This is just for sparring, a friendly competition. Both parties must try to avoid severely hurting each other during the process." Hu Yuhao could sense teacher Xian staring at him and understood his intention. He nodded and replied, "Noted." Xie Xianchen also nodded. By now, he'd calmed down slightly and slowly became excited. If he could defeat Hu Yuhao, would his class bell treat him nicer? Maybe he could even enter the illustrious Virtue Hall directly. This was a great opportunity for him. Xian Zuan heaved a sigh of relief after receiving Hu Yuhao's acknowledgement. He was afraid that Hu Yuhao would harm the academy's students in this competition. A huge problem would arise if that happened. But, for now, it seemed like he had no such intentions. Both competitors, please approach the waiting areas. Xian Zuan said loudly. The Soul Tool experimentation area had already been marked out yesterday. The waiting areas on both sides were separated by about 150 meters. It was also a way for Soul Engineers to fully unleash their long-range capabilities. But, from what they'd agreed on earlier, Hu Yuhao wouldn't use any Soul Tools apart from the milk bottle. Xie Xianchen turned around and walked away. He only felt his surging blood rushing through his veins. He couldn't wait. Hu Yuhao was different from him. He walked backwards and revealed a smirk of contempt. His first opponent really didn't seem too impressive. Although they were just sparring, he was careless enough to show his opponent his back. He didn't have any wariness towards his opponent. It seemed like Jing Hongchen was right, and organizing a sparring competition was necessary for these ordinary students from the academy. Xian Zuan also noticed this problem. That was why when both parties reached their waiting areas, he immediately shouted, "Begin." Hence Hu Yuhao could immediately recognize the different effects of the balls of light. The yellow light came from a Class 5 shot cannon, a domain-type offensive soul tool. When their shots exploded at a high velocity, they would cause intense shockwaves. Opponents who weren't skilled enough could easily be torn apart by the shockwaves. Even if the opponent could resist them, his movements would be greatly stalled. It was a rather effective Class 5 soul tool, although it was very difficult to create. The red light, on the other hand, came from the high-powered soul cannon on his other arm. It only had one effect, destroying the opponent. It would lock onto an opponent through the opponent's soul power, allowing the cannon to track one's opponent. The combination of the shot cannon and high-powered soul cannon was effective and powerful. Evidently, Xie Xianchen had prepared well. While this combination was effective, Hu Yuhao had expected it. When the soul cannons were fired, Hu Yuhao suddenly changed directions. He moved in a diagonal direction now. It was impressive, and when the shot cannon fired out the ball of yellow light, Hu Yuhao was no longer within the area covered by it. The ball of red light that came shortly after that. However, it also changed directions quickly, and was in hot pursuit of Hu Yuhao. But Hu Yuhao didn't even look at it. He changed directions again, and burst towards Xie Xianchen. They were only 50 meters apart now. Wasn't he scared of the high-powered soul cannon? At this point, everyone was puzzled with Hu Yuhao's intentions. Hu Yuhao said coldly, "If this were a battlefield, you'd already be a corpse. Will your enemies care whether you've used all your soul tools?" Xie Xianchen was dumbfounded as he sat on the floor. One of his hands was on his cheeks that were just slapped. He seemed to lose his awareness. Hu Yuhao lifted his right hand and pointed his index finger at the spectators. Following that, he made one revolution before placing his finger on his lips. He was asking everyone to remain quiet. After that, he shouted, "Next." It was only at this point that the academy's teachers and students reacted. A commotion ensued once more. The first round ended not long after its starting. Approximately 10 seconds had passed. It seemed like Hua Yuhao didn't even do anything. He only burst forward and slapped before he emerged victorious. He didn't use any dazzling soul skills, and the spectators didn't even see his soul rings. But he had won. He won cleanly. Did he really win that easily? It might appear very simple or easy, but was that really the case? Only Xian Zuan witnessed everything clearly as the referee. Firstly, Hua Yuhao hadn't wasted any time. When Xian Zuan signaled the start of the competition, he was dissatisfied with Xie Xianchen, and thus didn't wait for him to turn around or prepare. However, Hua Yuhao burst forward like a fired cannon shell. Undoubtedly, Hua Yuhao was ready. Xian Zuan wasn't too surprised when Hua Yuhao used the dark golden terror claws to tear apart the protective soul barrier and overcome Xie Xianchen. It was Hua Yuhao's reaction when the shock cannon was fired that shocked him. His direction changed immediately when the yellow light appeared, allowing him to dodge it effectively. How did he predict it like that? Furthermore, he had even managed to prevent the high-powered soul cannon from locking him onto him properly, and exploited the shockwave to increase his speed. If all of that was within his calculations, he was indeed to be feared. "Do you need to rest?" Xian Zuan asked Hua Yuhao. Hua Yuhao shook his head and replied, "No, let's continue." Their gazes met, and Hua Yuhao could tell that Xian Zuan was deep in thought. Xian Zuan could see Hua Yuhao's stubbornness in his spirit eyes, and sensed the strong competitive will in his body's silence. A voice that sounded like rumbling thunder resonated through the soul tool experimentation arena. This voice greatly eclipsed the commotion that had ensued from Xie Xuanchen's defeat. Even Hua Yuhao couldn't help but look into the air. Jing Hongchen floated in mid-air without using any flying-type soul tools. He was also looking at Hua Yuhao. Lin Jiari had sent someone to report to Jing Hongchen when he realized that the situation was getting out of control. After all, the teachers in the audience were all very strong, and he couldn't really control those from the illustrious Virtue Hall either. The second student sparring with Hua Yuhao entered the arena after being signaled by Xian Zuan. Compared to the previous competitor, this student looked much more stable. After he entered the arena, he stopped in his waiting area and watched Hua Yuhao with a vibrant look in his eyes. He seemed like a volcano that could erupt any time. Hua Yuhao acknowledged him mentally. This fight was highly unlikely to be as easy as the previous one. However, the stronger his opponent, the greater his fighting spirit. He squinted his eyes and looked at this opponent before returning to his waiting area. Xian Zuan observed both parties and calmed himself down. Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, Grade 6 student, Wan Ijuan. Please advise me. The youth who looked older than 20 years shouted. His voice rumbled and was full of a vigorous aura. His figure wasn't exactly huge, but he looked very sturdy. Hua Yuhao also lifted his hand and shouted, "Shrek Academy. Hua Yuhao. Please advise me, begin." Xian Zeman gestured suddenly and retreated rapidly. Hua Yuhao burst forth, just like before. The only difference was that a golden light now shone from him as he leapt up. 4 white soul rings rose from his feet, one was especially bright. Wan Ijuan had already made sufficient preparations. When Xian Zuan signaled the start of the fight, he backed away quickly and 2 streaks of light shot out from beneath his feet. The lights pushed his body off the ground. More than 10 soul tools appeared on his arms, shoulders, chest and other areas. However, he was stunned when he saw Hua Yuhao's white soul rings. This was weird. White soul rings. What was going on? Part 1 end here.